I'm primarily a health coach, and I sprinkle in yoga whenever I'm in town because I do leave Miami a lot now. I travel a lot. As soon as I did the class and finished it, I realized, of course, it is so much more than that. It is so much more of a spiritual practice than it is a physical one, although of course it is a very physical practice depending on what you do. Number one question is usually, how do I even start yoga? And with yoga, you end up falling pretty naturally into a little bit more of a spiritual lifestyle. I think that even as a yoga instructor, even as someone who's seen, wow, the life-changing benefits of meditation, it's not necessarily for everyone, and it's not the only way to come into a place of deep intuition, of peace, of inner knowing.
Parker, thank you so much for joining me. I am so excited to share your journey and your background with the audience. So just to kick things off for the people listening and watching, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, so my name is Parker Sloan Lero, better known to some as the Rolling Sloan, on Instagram. I'm a yoga instructor, I'm an integrative health coach, and I'm also currently pursuing my master's in nutrition and integrative health at Maryland University of Integrative Health, which is a really new thing. And I guess we'll be speaking about that today more in depth than I have with anyone publicly. So that's exciting. Yeah. And I'm born and raised in Miami, which is where we're both doing this podcast right now.
Yes, yeah, my Kendall girl, right?
Yes, Kendall girl.
Wasn't that pretty cool? Like the first time I met you, I was just like, I'm getting Kendall vibes. Like, was that not the realtor in me?
That was a very strong realtor moment for you. Yes. And it's funny because I feel like only people who have been to Kendall will ask like, "Oh, okay, you're from Miami, but like where in Miami? Like are you Kendall?" And I'm like, "Yeah, okay. You really know Miami. It's still part of Dade County though, Miami-Dade County. So we're in the 305. We're still in the 305."
Are you from Kendall? Are you from Hialeah? Where are you from, Um,
Yeah, yeah. It's a good
but
question.
that's great.
I don't want to say you can judge a book by its cover or by their neighborhood, but you kind of can with Miami.
Yeah, it's so different. Like every neighborhood is so different. But what I love about us and connecting is that you've gotten me on, well, you've been a part of like my yoga journey. And I would love if you could share with everybody else kind of how did you get started with yoga, teaching, and in the health and wellness field?
Yeah, so okay, yoga and health and wellness, a little bit of a different path there that ended up coming together in a really cool way. So I actually did not grow up being healthy and in tune with how food can nourish you. I don't want to call myself an unhealthy kid. I don't want to say I was an unhealthy kid, but I definitely was not healthy. I had high cholesterol in fourth grade. I had a little bit of baby fat into the years that I was not a baby anymore. And it's funny, the whole story about how I even got into health and wellness was that one day my dad was in the kitchen and he was making a green smoothie, and like that was the biggest trend, like green smoothie, green juicing. And he's like throwing spinach and kale in a smoothie. And I was like, that's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. Why would you do that? And he was like, well, I just got my blood results back and I have high cholesterol. So I'm making these green smoothies to help out my blood. And I was like, whoa, wait, like the food that you eat can better your health. Like I always knew that if you eat unhealthy, then you could be unhealthy, but I didn't realize that you could use foods to heal. And that was really my first moment. I think I was in seventh or eighth grade that I came to the fact that food is medicine, essentially. And from then I was hooked. I started looking into books and articles and looking into what foods could help your health in XYZ ways, like what foods help your eyesight, what foods can help your hair grow, what foods help your skin. And I was so interested in it since then. And I really changed around my entire diet. I finally started eating greens and salads and all the stuff. And then I got into high school. And I was pretty healthy all of that time in terms of nutrition. And it wasn't until my senior year of high school that I was invited to a yoga class. And my godmother, I call her my fairy godmother, she really is, she's magic. She invited me to a candlelight yoga class. And my initial thought was, oh my gosh, that's so cool. I can use this kind of exercise to get leaner and fitter and flexible. And as soon as I did the class and finished it, I realized, of course, it is so much more than that. It is so much more of a spiritual practice than it is a physical one, although, of course, it is a very physical practice depending on what you do. Um, and since then, I was hooked with it. And a couple of years later, when I was in college, I did my yoga teaching certification, my 200 hour, here in Miami. And since then, I actually didn't start teaching until about a year and a half after getting my certification because I had traveled abroad and then COVID hit. And so nobody could really see each other. And then Tiffany Levy and Tiffany, who started 420 Space Yoga here in Miami, we started a community beach class. And that was my first time really teaching in front of people. Now it's the most natural thing to me, but it used to be so nerve wracking. Like, that's a whole other story and explanation on that. But I was so terrified of teaching yoga, which is just so funny to look back on. But from there, it really kicked off my yoga career and my name in yoga in Miami. And I've been running it since then. And so now I'm primarily a health coach, and I sprinkle in yoga whenever I'm in town because I do leave Miami a lot now. I travel a lot, and so I think that summed up the question that you asked.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's such a interesting journey because yeah, those are like separate things, but when you can marry the two, I think it's just like so much more impactful. To take like the eating right, like the food that you put in your body, but then also like the yoga and like the mindfulness and like you said, like yeah, you can have like a spicy flow and you can like really work out and really sweat, but then also like on the flip side, like you can work out your body and your brain by like when you put me in pigeon pose and you're like, okay, we're gonna take 15 breaths, and it's like you have to release into it. Like that's a whole nother workout. So yeah, like the food and like the meditation and the stretching and the mindfulness, like marrying the two, like you really have to have both, right? So I'm wondering if maybe in throughout your journey, in the last couple of years, like I know that we had, like you said, like pre-COVID, you were doing some stuff, and then after COVID, and I know like beach yoga has been a thing. Like, have you seen the the landscape of health and wellness evolve, or have you seen any changes in the last couple years with people or with like holistic health in general?
Hmm. I think that's a great question, and I feel that reflecting on that, I feel I'm part of the new evolution in health and wellness and holistic health. I feel like I don't have enough years on me, in the space or in general, to speak on how it's fully evolved. But from what I've seen, there is a new evolution of people really getting into it and becoming coaches for it. I think social media plays a really big part in what the transformation of health and wellness has become. I think for good and for bad, to be honest. It seems like everybody's kind of a health coach and everybody's a nutritionist these days. Everybody's a doctor and has something to say, which can make things really confusing for people. And so it's a really great way to get people into the space of thinking about their health, which is so important, but it can also become sort of an information overload, which is why I do the work that I do. And it's like my main kind of push in like helping to bring clarity for people. But that being said, I think that for me, what I've seen the biggest transformation has been is that there's a lot of information on health, good and bad, and social media plays a huge, huge role in it.
Right. Yeah, no, I know that there's a lot of misinformation. I mean, but like you said, I do look at it as like the yin and the yang, like the positive with it, because like at least people are more aware of their health now, or at least like I go back to your story that you posted a couple of weeks back where it was just like you gave the advice of like, guys, you need to wake up, you need to take a shower, you need to wash the sleep off of yourself. And I was like there in bed, like not wanting to get up, like knowing that I needed to get up, but I like was watching your story and I'm like, shit, okay, like time to get out of bed, time to like wash the sleep off me and like get my day started. So I was wondering, like, talk to me a little bit more about like how do your clients meet you? I know that you're into coaching now, so do you meet them through a lot of social media? Is it referral?
Yeah, so I'm glad that you asked that because I didn't really touch on that in my response in just like my whole journey in general. So with my health coaching, um, I do it in a couple of different ways. So last year I started taking on personal clients, and that was purely people finding me through social media and finding out that I was a health coach and just asking me how that worked and signing up for my program, which usually looks like talking every week, being in contact. They can text me anytime. It's like having a health coach as a best friend when it comes to everything, like stress reduction, nutrition, movement, anything dealing with your health. And it's just a super fun process to work with people for that. But as soon as I started doing that, I actually was hired by a family. Me and my partner Andres, he's an exercise physiologist and also a health optimization coach. We were both hired by a family to be their private wellness coaches and consultants. And we moved to New York with them, and then they moved to Uruguay. So we moved to Uruguay, which, saying it out loud sounds crazy. And when it was happening, it sounded even crazier. Being able to say it now without like having this the gut wrenching feeling of like, wow, life is changing so much is really cool. I can say it with calm, but that's like not always how it was. Always very exciting, but it was a huge life change, honestly. So we did that into this year. And then we moved back to Miami at like the end of February, beginning of March. And since then, I've been offering health coaching in two different ways. So I actually work with a company called Dream Health. It's a health startup in London, and we take on clients to optimize their health, usually in a very data driven way. So we put them on Aura rings, we put them on continuous blood glucose monitors, we we track their sleep, we get their blood results, and we can actually, through metrics, see how their health is improving. A lot of people come in with bad sleep, or they want to improve their nutrition, or they want to improve their blood glucose, or whatever it is, usually dealing with fitness or nutrition or their mental health. Or what's the last one? There's another pillar that we follow, and you can really see through the numbers how things are improving. So that's really really cool. And I work with people from everywhere. I mean, I have clients in London, in Spain, in Denmark. So that's really awesome. And then I also have my own personal health coaching business, which is a little bit less. I wouldn't. It's less data driven. I'm not putting people on a bunch of devices. It's a little bit more intuitive. It's talking more consistently, speaking on their goals. We do address fitness. I create fitness programs for them. There's a lot of nutritional advice. And it's also very female biorhythm centric. So I am certified in something called applied female neuropsychophysiology, which is a mouthful, but it essentially means the connection between the female mind and body when it deals with the fluctuation in our hormones. So every month, really every week, we're different people because our hormones are in different places, and it affects everything from how we move to how we eat to how we think, really. And it's important to have that as the backbone of your health and wellness journey because it changes so much. Pretty much all or the grand majority of health and fitness data and science and studies have been done on men. So when a woman follows that and it doesn't work for her, it can be really unencouraging or disencouraging. And it's because it's not meant to work for us. It's meant to work for the people that the studies were done on, which is not us. So I help to bring that perspective into women's health, especially with my clients, which is super empowering and super liberating.
So interesting. I love that not only do you have like, a data driven metrics, scientific, if you will, like a whole, process, but then you also have like that intuitive coaching, just overall, for women specifically. And you're so right, because yeah, like I'm sure a lot of these old school, what was published in the textbook, right, from years ago was really focused towards male anatomy, and now to bring that into it. So tell me, do a lot of your client, like what are some of your goals that your clients come to you with? Is it, Parker, I want to help, I need your help to achieve blank, or what do they come to you with?
Yeah, that's a great question. Depending on which form of coaching people are coming to me for, I find that the goals are different. So people that I work with Dream right now are usually looking to improve their sleep, That's one of the biggest. And reduce their stress levels, and also just kind of get um, this is where we cut something out in the podcast. um, so improving their sleep, improving their stress levels, and also fine tuning their nutrition. That's a constant conversation in every client that I work with, I'd find. And most of our conversations start with and then are themed by the metrics. So when I work with my personal clients, I find that people usually come to me because they know that I work with the female biorhythm, and they're really looking to learn about that and how to implement that into their workouts, into their nutrition. I find that a lot of women really, really want to learn how to eat better. And I think it's not even eating better, because a lot of them, most of my clients come to me eating pretty clean. It's really confusing, right? We talked about that information overload, and being able to have another woman who understands being a woman, specifically in terms of the female biorhythm, and help to guide them and make it not so overwhelming, and be like, yeah, like, you've told me that food doesn't really work for you. You don't have to be eating that. Like, you don't have to be eating this way that you're seeing on social media. Like, give yourself permission to just feel what feels good for you can help people so much, because there's so much pressure when you go on Instagram and see a reel of someone eating those beautiful meal, or eating this like very unattainable way of eating. Or there's a lot of meals that we see that look very beautiful but really aren't so balanced and don't actually make you feel so good. So being able to help someone along the process and just really bring them back to their intuition, is really, really helpful. So I would say that's where the two kind of differ, and those are the types of clients that come to me. Sometimes it's people who haven't really started on a health journey and like really want to get into it, or it's people who have actually a lot of the time started on that and they're trying to get that last bit of like, I kind of want a coach to really help me, keep me accountable and give me that support that I feel like I want to talk to my friends about, but I don't always want to talk to my friends about it. So I'm going to have you do it, and we can talk all the time about it. And that's like why we're doing this.
Would you say with your coaching clients, it's more about holding them accountable and giving them that plan, so that they can transform? Like, what would you say is like the biggest thing that your clients need from you?
So, I would say the biggest plan that I give people is a fitness program. I use a whole platform. There's a free app that I have people go on. Like, it's completely included in the whole program. And that seems to be like the coolest part for people. So they actually get to follow that, instead of just figuring out how do I want to work out today and what's working out for me. And if something works out for them, we keep that. If something's not really working out, we don't keep that. And they don't have to have that pressure of fitting it into their schedule or figuring out how to fit it into their schedule. Um, and that being said, I feel like a lot of people are looking for ways to implement the new habits in nutrition and exercise into their lives. So depending on how they work, or if they work a 9 to 5, or if they're an entrepreneur, right? I've worked with both types of people. They're like, how do I find the time to cook for myself? I know what to do for myself. I know that I can exercise. I know that I can eat well, but I just don't know how to actually start it. And I think that's the main goal for people: knowing how to start it, knowing how to implement it, and then having the accountability to keep implementing it, and then also troubleshoot along the way. Because we work together for several months or more. So being able to keep up that accountability and make it a habit so that they can then walk away and be like, I feel confident to do this on my own.
Totally. And now I can really see the benefit of like working with you, because it's like, I'm sure these people, like you said, they're 9 to 5, they're entrepreneurs. They know what they should be doing. They know what they know, right? But then they need to come to you, Parker, and like you get them on a plan, you get them on the app, you give them the motivation, and I'm sure you also, hold them accountable, where you check in and you say, like, how is this going? How is this what we're implementing? How is it working out for you, right?
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that I offer them is the ability to text me anytime with a 24-hour answer guarantee. It's always less than 24 hours, but at a maximum within a day, I'm answering them. So they can text me when they're, let's say, at the grocery store, they're at Whole Foods or Publix or whatever it is, and they're like, should I buy this purely Elizabeth granola, or should I buy this one with the bear on it, whatever it is? And one of them is way better than the other, so I can tell them this is good and this is why it's good, and this is when you can implement these types of foods around your fitness and around your day and whatever that is. And I just think there's already so much that people have to think about, man or woman, in our lives. Like just getting the survival necessities checkmarked, right? That Maslow's hierarchy of health, like doing the job, feeding myself, if you have kids, feeding the kids, keeping up with family and community. So being able to take the pressure off making these decisions is really where being a health coach comes in, or hiring a health coach, because you don't have to force yourself to think about what's going to be right and wrong. You can piggyback off of someone, or soundboard off of someone, rather, to ask those questions and not worry about it so much. Health shouldn't be stressful, but these days it's become a stressful process because there's just so much information and there's so many decisions to make.
Yes, and it's so like going back to like, is what I'm reading online, is this for like, or how should I say this? Again, this is the editing part. Thanks, Omar. He's the editor. I'm trying to think of, like, going back to what you said, Parker, like going online and then, like, reading this advice, but then now that you said it, like, I'm thinking, wait, was this written for a man or for a woman? Is it like a more mature person or a younger person? So, like, you have to go with that filter now. And that leads me to my next question, which is, Parker, do you see some mistakes that people are making from listening to online gurus, or do your clients come to you and tell that and are proud to share with you, like, oh, Parker, I'm doing this. I read it online. And you're like, no, stop it. Like, do you have any stories like that?
Yes. Yes. I love that through this conversation you've been able to implement that mindset already, which is, I think, so important. You know, the biggest example I use really is articles, magazine covers, when you see a picture of, a ripped woman or a ripped man, and the cover says, um, the keto diet is the best for XYZ, or intermittent fasting is the best for XYZ. And you have to keep in mind, we all have to keep in mind, when they're saying that, is it based on science, first of all? And if it is, if they are talking about a study in the article, who was that study done on? They don't put a disclaimer on articles and magazines and social media posts saying, by the way, this study was only done on men. They just act like it's for the entire population, which is unfortunately why a lot of women end up dealing with health imbalances, because we overtrain, we undernourish, and we put extra stress on our bodies that is just not necessary. There's better ways to do it. And answering your question about if people come to me and they're like so proud about certain things that they're doing, or they're just telling me that they're implementing something in their health, I think intermittent fasting has taken over the world right now, or it has in the past, especially. And there are some changes being done to that. And I think that's the biggest thing that I see with women. I used to intermittent fast until, 1 p.m. every day, and it was not good for me. I thought it was. My body was running off adrenaline, so it felt fantastic. I didn't realize that that was happening. I just thought that was great. I was also dealing with gut issues at the time, so it felt better to not eat. And I didn't realize that's why it felt better to not eat. And so that's a whole story in itself. But I find a lot of women wanting to shed a little bit of fat, or lose a little bit of weight, or just implement this new practice because it sounds like it's healthy and we see it everywhere. And it's really not the same for women and men. I feel like that's one of the biggest. I mean, there's other biohacks, so to say, like cold exposure, like doing low carb. I think that's another one. A lot of people are carb phobic nowadays, unfortunately. And I would say decreasing carbohydrates and intermittent fasting are the two biggest things that women come to me with, that we need to shift perspectives on. And I think I'm not one to just tell someone you shouldn't do that. I think it's about letting someone experience that, in a controlled way, right? If they're working with me, then we talk about why they want to do that. What's your intention with doing that? And is there a healthy way to do it? A lot of the times it's just about making sure that you're not eating super late, and you will feel better in the morning, depending. I'm also not one to say that you shouldn't eat late every night. Sometimes social occasions give for that, and that's way better for your health than eating way earlier because it's supposed to be healthier, right? So that's another nuance. Um, a lot of the times it's about just shifting what that breakfast meal is, or making sure that you're eating consistently during the day so that you don't start off the day eating less and then you eat way more in the end, right? So what are those goals that you're trying to attain through the intermittent fasting? And when it comes to the carbs, like, carbs aren't bad, you know. Processed carbs are a whole other story. That's like, it's just not even food anymore. And I think that's the perspective shift that needs to come in. Like, grains are not terrible for you. You know, sweet potatoes are amazing, bananas are amazing. How are you doing it? How are you implementing it into your day? How sedentary are you? How active are you? And those are the things we talk about when I coach people. But carbs aren't bad, and I think that's a really big perspective shift to bring for women and men.
Totally. That's such great advice. And men. I think right now, people are seeing a lot of, like we said, online, they're seeing, eat this, not that. But it's like, there's a big asterisk, and you have to like really dive deeper into it. It's not just like a black or white, a zero or a one answer.
100%. I think the perspective needs to change to just how whole food is your diet, right? So it's not about the macros per se. It's not about how much protein are you getting, how much carbs are you getting, how much fat are you getting. It's what is the source that it's coming from? Because if most people just switched to eating less processed foods, right, less things that come in a bag, and ate most of their diet from the produce section, and we can talk about protein quality, but that's also a different thing. Just getting lean sources of protein, eating from the produce section, eating enough veggies, really, like, eat your veggies. I would say that for everyone. You're going to be way better off, right, than eating maybe the processed, like, keto snack that you're going for because the marketing is really great on it.
Right, right. That label that they stick on it, and they say it's natural or it's healthy, but it's like, what do those words
Mhm.
actually mean,
Mhm.
right?
Yes, lots of greenwashing.
Yes, I've seen that on your profile too because I follow you. But one thing I have to talk about, because I'm seeing it more and more and more often, can you share about cold plunges? I know you mentioned it briefly before, but like, what's your take on the cold plunges?
You know, full transparency, I need to do more research on cold exposure. I think because most of the research has been done on men, I need to see if there's actually research being done on women. And I think that cold exposure can be fun. It can be invigorating. It's There's something called a hormetic stressor. So hormetic stressors can be really healthy. Intermittent fasting can be a hormetic stressor. Cold plunging is a hormetic stressor, and there's something called eustress and distress. So eustress are is a good form of stress, like going in the sauna can be a form of eustress. Cold plunging can be a good form of eustress. Exercising is a really good form of eustress because these are stressors in the body that can help it to adapt in positive ways, but they can also turn it into distress. So if you already have stress going on in your body, if you have elevated levels of cortisol, or if your cortisol is burned out, or if you're feeling burned out, then adding these forms of good stress can turn into bad stress. So I think that I'm actually really glad that you brought this up because cold exposure is something that I would love to see more science done on for women. I think that it might be a cycle dependent thing. So, depending on where you are in your cycle, maybe you should implement or could implement more cold exposure, while at other times of the cycle, maybe you shouldn't. For instance, the week before menstruation tends to be a more stressful time for women. Our bodies actually switch to a more sympathetic state right after ovulation. Sympathetic meaning a little bit more stressed. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's evolutionary reasons for that, but it might not be smart to add extra forms of stress in the week before menstruation because it could turn into that distress, increasing PMS, maybe increasing period symptoms, and so on. That's just my theory with it, but I would love to see more science done on that.
I love it. Parker, what I love about you, just really quick, is like, if you're not an expert on it, I love that you say, hey, like, I need to dive in a little bit more on that. That's what I love about you. I love that you keep it real.
I think that's important, and thank you for that. I think that a few years ago, I would have been scared to get answers that I didn't know, or get questions that I didn't know the answer to. But I think it's super empowering to not know the answer to something so that you can look into it later and answer that for people. And that's that. Just knowing your limits is a very, very empowering thing. So thank you for recognizing that.
Yeah, totally. What advice would you maybe give some, so, to that person listening and watching us, you're thinking about working with Parker, you know that you need to make a move, you need to make a change. What advice would you give, Parker, to the person listening who wants to transition to a healthier lifestyle and they want to integrate yoga and they want to integrate nutritional well-being and intuitive eating?
Mm. Are we talking about the person who's not implemented any of these things and they're like eating fast food several times a week, like starting from scratch?
Yeah, maybe that person, and then they're
Yeah.
really they know they need to make a change.
Yeah. Yeah. Or maybe even the person who just, wants to be better in general in those areas. So, what I would say is funny, the yoga question I get a lot from people. Number one question is usually, how do I even start yoga? Um, and with yoga, you end up falling pretty naturally into a little bit more of a spiritual lifestyle if you do it consistently. I mean, it depends on the person. And you start becoming more in tune with yourself. So I would say if you're trying to become more in tune, yoga is a really great way to do it if you're called to it. So that's what I'll say. I think that even as a yoga instructor, even as someone who's seen, wow, the life changing benefits of meditation, it's not necessarily for everyone, and it's not the only way to come into a place of deep intuition, of peace, of inner knowing. It's funny. I'm currently rereading John Kabat-Zinn's book called "Wherever You Go, There You Are," and he's a huge name in the world of meditation and mindfulness. And he even says meditation is not for everyone. It's for you if you're called to it. It's for you if you're ready for it. It is very, very deep work, but it's also not the only way. He even says there is not one cure all for this, right? We're all so different. And just like when it comes to nutrition and movement, different things work for different people. So I think that's a really important thing to say. But if you are trying to get into yoga specifically, first of all, you do not have to be flexible. That's everyone's qualm. It's always, I can't do yoga because I'm not flexible. It is not about being flexible. It's actually about becoming at coming to peace with the fact that you might not be so flexible and being able to sit with yourself without judgment in a class because of the lack of flexibility, which brings you to become more flexible, right? Internally and then maybe externally. So that's something to keep in mind. It's a really great way to community build, which is also really great for our health. So I love that. When it comes to eating healthier, I would say number one, just look at your diet and notice how many things you're eating out of packages. So if something's in a package, that means that it's been processed at least a little bit, unless you're getting like a bag of apples from the produce section. Um, I've heard people say only shop on the outside perimeter of the grocery store because once you go in the aisles, like that's all the processed stuff. I actually don't completely agree with that because there are different sauces and dressings that you can get and really healthy packaged goods that, going back to granola. I love granola. Not everybody can have the time to make that at home. So if there is a really healthy brand doing great things, then yeah, then you can buy a bag of that. You need to buy your grains in bags, and I love rice and oatmeal, so I've never read Grain Brain, but they work for me. So you need to get that in the middle of the grocery store. Like you're not going to find that by the fruits. So I wouldn't really follow completely that rule, but keep that in mind that most things will be packaged and processed. So I would say just look at how many whole foods you're eating, look at how much you're snacking during the day and what those snacks look like. And I don't want to overwhelm people with tips. So I think that's really the biggest thing I would keep in mind. Switching over to a mainly whole food diet and not really stressing too much about anything else. And then you can fine tune from there.
Totally. But I love what you said because I've definitely seen that TikTok or that short form video where it's like, only eat the perimeter, like, don't go in the middle, it's bad stuff. But like, here we just contradicted that. It's like, you can't just take that one size fits all, advice, or else you're going to,
Yeah, where are you going to get your
right?
tomato sauce? You can make it yourself, but geez, a good rouse every now and then is a
Yeah,
great
yeah. Like
thing.
imagine if somebody like really took that advice to heart and like was super strict with themselves. Because like I know those people are out there, especially, if that person listening, like who are so strict, like, no, I'm not gonna do any rice. But it's like, oh my God, you're missing out like on such an important grain, right?
Yes, yes. Yeah. You know what? And you just inspired another point for me, which is every time you see something, because looping it back from the beginning of this conversation, we talked about how overwhelming social media can be when it comes to nutrition content, to fitness content, everything health and wellness. And so I would just encourage people when they see these types of information to stop and question, would that work for me? Does that work for me? Does that align with me? I think that so many people end up living out of alignment because of these things that we see other people doing. And to be honest, a lot of times when other people are doing these things, it's not even in alignment with themselves. All right. Like I've definitely tried things myself. And I think thankfully I've always had a responsible mindset to not always post about new things that I'm doing because I want to see if it works for me. But there are times where I've posted it and been like, oh, I'm doing this thing or I'm trying this thing out or I love this. And then it ends up really not working out so great for me. So I drop it. But somebody might have remembered that from those weeks ago and been like, oh, but like she posted about that and she's doing that. So I'm going to keep doing that for me. And it might not even be working for them, but they keep doing it because they saw someone else that they trust doing it. So I try to be really responsible with that. But that's something to keep in mind. Pause, ask yourself if that really aligns with you. Does it feel good? And then if it does, try it out. And if it doesn't, you don't have to stick to things all the time.
Yes, yes. It's okay to be, you don't have to be so strict with yourself, zeros
Yes.
and ones binary, right?
Mm-hmm.
Parker, what's that one thing that you wish more people knew about just the benefits of, living healthy and holistic health?
I think that it doesn't have to be so complicated. I think that as humans, it's so great that we think about things so much and we can overcomplicate things as a result of that. But I think that one thing I would help or I would wish that people know is that it doesn't have to be so hard, it doesn't have to be so complicated, right? Going back to eating whole foods, right? Whole foods are way more simple than the processed foods that we eat. Maybe will they take time to prepare a little bit, but generally speaking, they're more simple foods to eat. And if you're eating that way, you're going to feel a lot better in the long run and actually spend less money too than eating processed foods. Another thing that I wish people would know more of is actually going back to that sense of alignment. So just really really questioning all the time what feels good for you, rather than following what other people are doing, um, because there are just so many options out there, which is great, but we can't take on them all, which means that we have to choose. And if we're going to choose, we should choose what feels best for us. Yeah, and a lot of the times, less is more.
Yeah, like if you try to do it's like jack of all trades, master of none, right? Like if you're trying to be the yogi, intuitive eat, you want to do intermittent fasting, you want to eat whole food. It's like, okay, start small, right? Like start with one thing at a time and then like slowly build up.
Yeah, and I've definitely been there. I mean, I'm notorious for putting way too much on my plate and trying to be it all, but then really not amounting to the things that I want to amount to. Because there's just so much that I want to do that it ends up overwhelming me and you don't really get anything done. That's something I've actually had to reflect on recently. As of literally the past week, I had a very deep conversation with myself and a couple of people where I realized that focusing on maybe three things is going to bring you so much further. Because if you look at it like this, we need focus to let us expand, right? But we can't expand without the root of focus. We can't have all of these expansionary things that we work on and then focus on something. We need that root to then bring in all of the creativity. We need that stability to then let us do more with ourselves. And it'll feel so much easier, at least for me. Maybe for other people, it's opposite. But try to do less and see how that works for you. It'll probably work out better.
That's the soundbite. That's the clip.
Write it down.
That's it. That's the Instagram clip. Yep. Mark it.
Yeah.
Love it. Parker, what are your final thoughts here?
This was super exciting to be able to talk with you and talk about everything that's going on with me. I think that I'm personally going through a lot of shifts right now in terms of things that I'm bringing on. I had just recently announced that I'm getting my master's. My master's it starts next week. I'm starting my own podcast very, very soon. Like as of this week, I'm taking on some mock interviews, and so I'm just so excited with the alignment that this podcast has fallen into, and I think the universe did this for both of us. It kind of synced us two together to affirm what both of us are doing, which I think is so beautiful. So thank you, Joe, for that. Thank you so much for having me on. And I think that's that. I'm always posting about new things that are going on and new things that I'm learning, especially now that I'll be back in school. There's going to be just so much that I want to share on all things health and wellness and female biorhythm, which, by the way, is so important for men to know as well. It's not just information for girls.
I'm picking up. I'm a man. Do I have to say that? But like I'm picking up so much, and like, yeah, right. I didn't even like realize. Like I'm really now in my brain. I'm really thinking of like, oh snap! Like, was that study done in the 1980s? Because it's like a whole process for peer. Now I'm like thinking of peer review, and it's like, wait, was that like peer reviewed in the 1980s when they had like maybe one woman like on staff and it was like all men. So now you got like my brain going and like I'm thinking of all these biases that we could have, right?
Well, even nowadays, a lot of the studies are not done on women, but that's also something to take note of. Like, how outdated is this study even for you as a man? And have new studies been done on it? There's so much health information that's still pushed nowadays that just is proven to be untrue, like cholesterol in eggs, for instance. Like, don't really need to worry about that so much. But yeah, I think every man knows a woman. Every man was birthed from a woman, might have sisters, might have friends, and being able to understand them better is pretty life changing. So this isn't only information for women, but it's also information for men.
Totally. Parker, thank you so much for hopping on and sharing. Thank you so much for being along with my journey, being there for everybody at Club Space, 420 Yoga, Beach Yoga, that I couldn't make it to last night. I'm sorry, but I have to go to your next one.
Oh yeah, I'll be doing a
Where
lot more events in Miami. It really
Yes.
inspired me to start planning more of those.
Yes. My next question, where can everybody find you on social in Miami? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so at the moment, well, I've been traveling a lot, but I will be in Miami a lot more often, so that's great. You can find me at different events. I'll be hosting yoga events and different fun things. I can't tell you what yet because I need to brainstorm it. On social media, you can find me at The Rolling Sloan because my name is Parker Sloan. And my website is therollingsloan.com. Soon I'll have a podcast. It's called the Cure Rated Podcast. That's the first time I've announced that, so that's exciting.
Exclusive right here, y'all.
Yes, very exclusive. And that's pretty much that. So I usually post my events on Instagram, keep up with the stories and the posts on there. I think that's it. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, everybody, check out Parker. Parker's the real deal. Love you, Parker. Love your yoga classes. Love the insights that you bring into the health and wellness space. There's seriously just so much noise out there, so many TikToks, so many Instagrams on it. So it was really refreshing just to sit down with you virtually and to have this conversation. And for that person listening and watching, DM Parker, reach out to her. She has a wealth of knowledge. If you're thinking about taking that journey forward and you need a little bit of help, or you just need a little bit of accountability, I think you will have great success with Parker. Parker, congrats on your master's program. So looking forward to seeing you in real life soon at another yoga class, or for a workshop with you.
Totally. Thanks so much, Joe. We'll be talking very, very soon.
Thanks, Parker.
Thanks, everyone.